Good day everyone, I'm Giselle Arponce, BS Ed Math 3rd year. Today I will be discussing Module 11, Designing Learning Activities in Mathematics. For today's learning outcomes, at the end of this lesson, learners should be able to Number 1, design learning activities in mathematics by applying the following. Constructivism and discovery learning, inquiry-based learning with reflective teaching, cooperative learning with writing to learn, blended teaching approach, or flipping classroom. Being an educator is not an easy job. You have a big responsibility in nurturing young minds and shaping them into productive individuals of the society. Aside from developing their moral values and spiritual values, imparting knowledge about the subject matter, your teaching is your number one task. One of these is designing activities. So what is learning activities? Are activities designed or deployed by teacher to bring about or to create conditions for learning. These learning activities can stipulate experiential learning, mobilize conceptual thinking, and prompt students to engage in analytical discussion. There are steps in designing learning activity. A definite beginning, an ending, a clear purpose and learning objective, complete and understandable directions, a plan for assessing the objectives, and a mechanism for providing feedback to students. A description of the technology or tool being used in the exercises. Example of learning activities is interaction with content. Number 1 is drill and practice, lecture, quiz, student presentation. Number 2, interaction with digital content, game and simulation. 3, interaction with others, debate, discussion, feedback, guest speaker. Number 4, problem solving and critical thinking. It includes case study, concept mapping, real-world projects. Example of learning activities is the reflection. It's a reflection or journal. Then I will proceed to designing activities by applying constructivism and discovery learning. So what is constructivism? It is the theory that argues that knowledge is constructed and the learner is able to draw ideas from his or her own experiences and connect them to new ideas. Related to this approach, the process of assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation refers to the process of fitting it into an existing schema, meaning it is your assimilation of knowledge into your prior knowledge which is known, and accommodation refers to using newly acquired information to revise and redevelop an existing schema. A constructivist teacher refers to raw data, primary sources, interactive materials to provide experiences for their students, rather than relying solely on another set of data. Hands-on activities and observation provide shared experiences for this construction. The constructivist teacher sets up problems, monitors students' exploration, guides the direction of student inquiry, and promotes new patterns of thinking. These are the essential components to constructivist teaching. There are several components to include if you plan on adhering to constructivist principles in your classroom or when designing your lessons. The following are from Paviskar, Hartley, and Whitney, 2009. Illicit prior knowledge. New knowledge is created in relation to learners' pre-existing knowledge. Lessons, therefore, requiring eliciting relevant prior knowledge. Activities include pre-test, informal interviews, and small group warm-up activities that require recall of prior knowledge. Number 2 is creative cognitive dissonance. It assigns problems and activities that will challenge students. Knowledge is built as learners encounter novel problems and revise existing schemas as they work through the challenging problem. Number 3 is apply knowledge with feedback. Encourage students to evaluate new information and modify existing knowledge. Activity should allow for students to compare pre-existing schema to the novel situation. Activities might include presentation, small group or class discussion, and quizzes. Number 4 is reflect on learning. Provide students with an opportunity to show and themselves what they have learned. Activities might include presentation, reflexive papers, or creating a step-by-step tutorial for another student. Discovery learning. Bronner 1961 support the idea that students learn when they use of personal experiences to discover facts, relationships, and concepts. There are 5 principles of discovery learning model. Principle 1 is problem solving. Instructors should guide and motivate learners to seek for solutions by combining existing and newly acquired information and simplifying knowledge. This way, learners are driving force behind learning. Take an active role and establish broader application for skills through activities that encourage rest, problem solving, and proving. Principle 2 is learner management. Instructors should allow participants to work either alone or with others and learn at their own pace. This flexibility makes learning the exact opposite of a static sequencing of lessons and activities, relieves learners from unnecessary stress and make them feel they own learning. Principle 3 is integrating and connecting. So, instructors should teach learners how to combine prior knowledge with new and encourage them to connect to the real world. Familiar scenarios become the basis of new information, encouraging learners to extend what they know and invent something new. Principle 4, information analysis and interpretation. Discovery learning is a process-oriented and not content-oriented, and is based on the assumption that learning is not a mere set of facts. Learners, in fact, learn to analyze and interpret the acquired information rather than memorize the correct answer. Principle 5 is failure and feedback. Learning doesn't only occur when we find the right answer. It also occurs through failure. Discovery learning does not focus on finding the right end result, but the new things we discover in the process. And the instructor's responsibility is to provide feedback, since without it, learning is incomplete. This is the designing learning activity by applying constructivism and discovery learning. As a constructivist learning design, we have grouping, situation, bridge, questions, exhibit, reflection. For groupings, it is how will you group students to collaboratively learn. For example, you can have a team of 2, 3, 4, 5 to process to use group students. Situation. What are you planning on having your student to explain? For example, problem solving, making decisions, drawing conclusions, setting goals. For the bridge, this is the initial activity that evaluates students' prior knowledge to connect new understanding. For example, making lists, class discussion to introduce a concept or a topic. For the questions, you need to consider what guiding question will be used to introduce the activity to engage students and allow learning to progress. Example, continuous active learning from exhibit promotes student reflection. For exhibit, students create a product or exhibit for others to explain thinking and learning. Verbal presentation, creating a graph, role-playing, creating an iMovie. For reflection, students reflect on predictions made while explaining learning situation and other exhibits. These are the questions you need to consider. What did students take away? What knowledge and skill were learned? Next is the inquiry-based learning with reflective teaching. Inquiry-based learning start by posing questions, problems, or scenarios rather than simply presenting established facts or portraying a smooth path to knowledge. It is closely related to problem-based learning and is generally used in small-scale investigation and projects as well as research. Reflective teaching is a process where teacher thinks over their teaching practices, analyzing how something was taught and how practice might be improved or changed for better learning outcomes. There are 5 characteristics of inquiry-based teaching. The process focus, investigation, group learning, discussion, monitoring, real-life application. For the process focus, when students solve problems themselves, they internalize conceptual processes. Inquiry-based teaching prioritize of process over product. For the investigation, the teacher may pose a problem derived from the class content or student questions. The student then investigates the issue to find an answer. For group learning, students may work in pairs or in small groups when exploring a problem. Students assess one another throughout the learning process, which enables them to share and build upon ideas as well as articulate how they arrive at a solution. For discussion monitoring, as the student works together, the teacher can move from group to group, listening to their discussion. Teacher may ask questions to gauge student understanding and correct any misconception. Number 5 is real-life application. Students solve math problems that have meaningful life application. For example, a teacher may present a multiplication problem as an interesting story. The basic action principle underpinning reflective inquiry learning, it involves identifying a problematic issue, imagining a possible solution, trying it out, evaluating it, did it work, and changing practice in the light of that evaluation. For the framework for designing and implementing inquiry-based activities, we have the task, exploration, presentation, connection, generalization, translation, expansion. These are the 7 stages of framework for designing and implementing inquiry-based activities. For the task, a problem task is invented and presented by teacher through a context resulting from children's interests, experiences, knowledge, queries. The tasks which have one or more solutions is designed in such a way that it problematizes and incites children in order to engage them in a problem-solving and posing process. The problem to be solved could be non-standard, unfamiliar, a bit complex, and a novel situation in order not to be solved just by applying existing knowledge and already known strategies, but through exploration. Exploration, children individually or in group use their own informal problem-solving strategies to explore the problem introduced by the scenarios, choose materials and other auxiliary means to make conjecture, to pose questions to each other and to the teacher for understanding, grasping the situation, and to suggest questions in order to solve the problem. In this stage, students have the opportunity to reflect and think about the problem on their own before sharing their thoughts with their peers. They are also free to discuss their ideas about the problem with their peers before presenting them to the whole class. Presentation, children share their exploration with the whole class by presenting, describing their ideas, construction, solution, etc. The teacher in that stage is an observer and organizer of each team presentation, orchestrating student contribution, posing questions to help children describe, explain, and open out their exploration. Connection. Teacher in cooperation with students summarizes the result, pose questions, and encourage students to ask questions, then connect the presented ideas with each other, with the task that was explored and with mathematical aims in order to construct a common meaning that the classroom would share. Teacher questions have encouraged mathematical thinking and reasoning and can be of several types. At that stage, it will become apparent if cooperative grouping strategies are effective in promoting classroom discourse. Generalization. Teacher is generalizing student action, shaping the mathematical concept, connecting it with student previous knowledge, and giving feedback to them. Translation. At that stage, students are asked to communicate with others, students from another class, family, etc., their solution, creation, understanding, through different modes, verbalizing, gesturally, and sematizing, according to Comfort 2016. Expansion. Students are asked to solve related change expanded problems. In all the above stages, teachers are also responsible to take student questions and comments into consideration, turn them into learning opportunities, incorporating them to their instructional design, creating a new problem-based task. Cooperative learning. Cooperative learning, jigsaw, learning together, group investigation, student team achievement, division, games tournament is a generic term that is used to describe an instructional arrangement for teacher academic and collaborative skills to small heterogeneous groups of students, according to Rich 1993, Shara 1980. Is dimly highly desirable because of its tendency to reduce per-computation and isolation and to promote academic achievement and positive interrelationship. Some cooperative learning structure are think, pair, share, number heads, jigsaw, round robin, round the table. Writing to learn. According to Bolles 2012, writing is a process of meaning-making and a series of related text-making activities, generating, arranging, and developing ideas in sentence, drafting, shaping, rereading the text, editing, and revising. According to Gold, Dissonance, 1990. Writing is also known as creative process because it is the process of reaching one's thought and discovering them. Cooperative learning has been found to be successful and productive teaching methods to develop linguistic, social, and communicative skills because it provides maximum chances for student-student interaction with conceptual input and output in a supportive atmosphere, according to Angahari and Samarjan 2014. There are three major components of cooperative learning. Number one is lesson preparation. Number two is lesson instruction. Number three is lesson evaluation. Lesson preparation. During the lesson preparation component, teachers select the mathematics and collaborative objectives to target the instruction and cooperative learning groups. Plan the math activity. Identify ways to promote the elements of cooperative learning. Identify rules. Establish groups. Designing math activities for cooperative learning groups requires consideration of both the instructional objectives and the purpose of having children work in a cooperative instructional arrangement. The teacher should design activities to promote math understanding by having students practice, experiment, manipulate, reason, and problem solve. Such math activities may help students make connections across math skills and concepts and other disciplines. Kagan, 1989-90, identified ways to structure group activities to foster group interaction. Examples of cooperative learning activity is categorizing. For this description, students analyze and classify objects based on specific criteria. Example, categorize based on attribute, categorize number in various ways, odd, even, multiples. Number 2 is co-op. Each student studies a part of a topic and then presents his or her information to group teammates. Example, study, classmate preference on certain topics and construct graphs. learn algebraic formulas, and solve equations together. Number heads. After each team member numbers of students discuss the answer to a question. Then a large group, the teacher calls a specific number and a group to answer the question. Example, for the math activity, discuss the answer to a mental computation problem. Apply the definition of a rule previously introduced to problems. Explain the application of the rule. Round table. Students to work the problems jointly by passing the problems around the table for each member's response. Example, A. Pass a worksheet with multiplication facts for each member to answer a problem. Pass problems to each member to compute the next step of an algorithm. Number one is positive interdependence. Number two is face-to-face interaction. Number three is individual accountability. Number four is group behavior. Number five is group processing. Positive interdependence means that students see the importance of working as a team and realize that they are responsible for contributing to the group's effort. Number two, face-to-face interaction involves students working in an environmental situation that promotes eye contact and social space so that students can engage in discussion. Individual accountability suggests that each person is responsible to the group and must be a contributing member, not someone who lets others do all of the work. Number four is group behavior. Refer to those interpersonal, social, collaborative skills needed to work with others successfully. Number five, group processing is a time after the cooperative learning task is finished when the team members analyze their own and their group's abilities to work collaboratively. Number two, for lesson instruction. This refers to the time each cooperative learning activity occurs. Students should engage in cooperative learning after they have received direct instruction in mathematics and collaborative skills targeted for the group activity. Lesson instruction consists first of the direct instruction and then the cooperative learning activity. Cooperative learning activity can be used as a guided practice time when students engage in tasks to practice introduce skills. Cooperative learning can be used at the onset of math instruction as a means of reviewing skills and concepts or after the presentation or subject where new materials is practiced within the context of previously taught materials. For example, if the math objective is to teach students how to solve story problem using a strategy, then the strategy steps should be first taught directly. Students could then work in a cooperative learning activities that requires the use of strategy to solve story problems. An important aspect of the lesson instruction component is the teacher's role. The teacher must A. Have student transition quickly after direct instruction. B. Have activities and materials ready. C. Monitor student progress in groups. D. Reinforce the occurrences of collaborative behaviors. Lesson evaluation. The purpose is to assess student mastery of the math objectives and the group ability to work collaboratively. Teachers can conduct such evaluation by observing student During the cooperative learning activity, having students complete individual tasks following cooperative learning activities. C. Asking students to engage in group processing or self-evaluation. Designing your cooperative learning activity. Selecting as learning activity structural design format. Several types, general types include A. Group project performance, inquiry-based learning and themes, collaborative content processing, jigsaw model, graffiti model, collaborative group work, collaborative assessment. 2. Design an effective task structure. The task design elements to determine include the size of the group, the completion of the group, potential rules for group members. For creating groups, 3 or 4 members are typically optimal. Random grouping often produces relatively desirable result. As a matter of protocol, it seems to be more effective practice to create a group first and then give out the task and direction. For the time frame and nature of the task, time frame of the task may seem like common sense, but it is a critical factor in process. According to Leary 1994, it is student rules within the groups. It provides students a clearer sense of what to do in the process. Arrangement of desk workspaces. It is necessary to structure the room physically so that students can easily interact with their fellow cooperative group members. 3. Effectively assessing the cooperative learning activities. It is especially significant when it comes to cooperative learning. Blended teaching approach. Some consideration when implementing blended learning in class. Use a variety of teaching tools. Incorporate digital technology into your classroom lesson along with your traditional methods of instruction. Make learning accessible for students. Learning should continue after students leave the classroom, and benefit of incorporating digital learning is that it allows students to access information, activities, games, anywhere, anytime. Number 3, personalized learning pathways for each student. Each student is unique with the approach to the learning. Make sure to use resources with varying degrees of difficulty to encourage students that will need it, while challenging those that have mastered the material. Or choose the blended learning model that works for you. Test out different models of blended learning to see what fits best in your classroom. Blended teaching approach is an instructional approach that uses digital strategies in tandem with the best practice in classroom. It is known as hybrid learning. It is a method that integrates technology and digital media with traditional instructor-led classroom activities, giving students more flexibility to customize their learning experiences. Some of the popular models to consider are station rotation model. Students rotate through different learning stations in class. This could be a mixture of group work, online learning, small groups instruction, and full class collaboration. The flipped classroom. Students are first introduced to concept at home through online coursework and then practice in a class where teacher assistant. The flex model, students work through online learning activities on a customized and fluid schedule with teacher assistant as needed. Blended teaching approach is an instructional approach that uses digital strategies in tandem with the best practice in classroom. It is known as hybrid learning. It is a method of teaching that integrates technology and digital media with traditional instructor-led classroom activities, giving students more flexibility to customize their learning experiences. Flipped classroom is a model of blended learning model in which students learn by watching video lectures or other educational materials at home while homework is done in the classroom with the teacher and student solving queries. According to Candrodi and Pratistis 2013. Characteristic of flipped classroom model. Flip, which is F for flexible environment, L for learning culture, I for intentional content, P is professional educator. Flexible environment. Flipped learning allows for a variety of learning modes. Educators often physically rearrange their learning spaces to accommodate a lesson or unit to support either group work or independent study. They create flexible space in which students choose when and where they learn. Furthermore, educators who flip their classes are flexible in their expectation of student timelines for learning and in their assessment of student learning. Learning culture is in the traditional teacher-centered model, the teacher is the primary source of information. By contrast, the flipped learning model deliberately shifts instruction to a learner-centered approach, wherein in-class time is dedicated to exploring topics in greater depth and creating rich learning opportunities. As a result, students are actively involved in knowledge construction as they participate in and evaluate their learning in a manner that is personally meaningful. Intentional content. Flipped learning educators continually think about how they can use the flipped learning model to help students develop conceptual understanding as well as procedural fluency. They determine what they need to teach and what materials students should explore on their own. Educators use intentional content to maximize classroom time in order to adapt methods of student-centered active learning strategies dependent on grade level and subject matter. Professional educator. The role of a professional educator is even more important and often more demanding in a flipped classroom than in a traditional one. During class time, they continually observe their students, providing them with feedback in the moment and assessing their work. Fitting with the revised Bloom's taxonomy in traditional learning, lower level of learning such as remembering and understanding is happening in class, while students are usually left to work on activities that involves higher level of learning outside the classroom. However, in the flipped classroom model, learning is flipped. As you see from the pyramid, the student can finish the lower level of cognitive work before class, and when they come to class, they can engage in higher cognitive levels of learning with peers and teacher present. How to implement a flipped classroom. Number 1, plan. Figure out which lesson in particular you want to flip. Outline the key learning outcomes and a lesson plan. 2. Record. Instead of teaching in this lesson in person, make a video. A screencast work. Make sure it contains all the key elements you mentioned in the classroom. 3. Share. Send the video to your students. Make it engaging and clear. Explain that the video's content will be fully discussed in class. 4. Change. Now that your students have viewed your lesson, be prepared to actually go more in depth than ever before. 5. Group. An effective way to discuss the topic is to separate into groups where students are given a task to perform. 6. Regroup. Get the class back together to share the individual group's work with everyone. Ask questions. Dive deeper than before. After the 6th step, review, revise, and repeat. Some other strategies that can be used in class activities include problem-based learning. Class time can be spent working on problems that can last for the duration of a semester. This is an example of learning activities in blended teaching approach, living classroom. Number 1 is individual problem solving, time on task 5 to 10 minutes, group size 1 to 4 students. In-class problem solving activities allow students to tackle problems during class with their peers and instructor on hand to discuss challenges. Ideally used to increase practice time on problem solving and provide immediate feedback to students about misconception. For the learning activity, kindly answer the following question. Note that each question is worth 5 points. So good luck. That's all for today. Thank you for listening.